Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, chaps. Adam, welcome back from your holiday. How are you? And what colour was your arrow in game week 3?
Um, yeah, no, I'm excellent. Thanks. Had a great holiday. Feel relaxed and recovered. I think I got a red arrow, but I haven't checked it well enough. I could be surprised and got a green arrow. I don't know, but we'll gamble. We'll gamble with a red arrow. Yeah. If in doubt, it's probably red.
It is, um, yeah, it's red. What were the highlights or not of your game week? Have you got any idea? It seems you were away
What were the
sunning
highlights of my
yourself.
game? Yeah, what are the highlights of my game week? There weren't loads. I think particularly, I think a lot of people. I didn't have Perisic, so I didn't get any fun there. Um, Salah scored, so I probably picked the. I think that's probably it. I picked the best captain I could with my team. Um, the one frustration was I started Nico Williams. I think it was and they conceded fairly late, so that was a bit frustrating. And I had both Pereira and Bailey on my bench, so I could have picked a better starting 11 out of the players that I had. But yeah, all in all, I think it was a fairly low scoring game week unless you owned certain players. So yeah, we move on to the next game week.
Certain players like Ivan Perisic, who is owned by Rich Clarke. Welcome, Rich. And what colour was your arrow in game week 3?
Yeah, I think that was all that it took to get a green arrow was holding on to Perisic from week one. It was a difficult week for many people. So delighted to get a green arrow last week. It wasn't a low scoring week, so 54 was pretty good, and it's mainly down to Perisic there. The rest of my defence didn't really do much in terms of the Norton 1-pointers. But yeah, very happy with him. Very happy I haven't got a wasted transfer bringing him in. So all good, and the team looks in good shape now. So I'm pretty optimistic going into the next group of games.
Good stuff. And also had Andreas and Bailey on the bench as well.
I did, yeah. The recommendations in terms of like benching dilemmas of play, Andreas ahead of Neto, away to Spurs, and I just thought, went with the price kind of thing. I thought Wolves might get something, so I got that slightly wrong. But I'm not the only one who left Andreas on the bench, am I? He was pretty much on.
Was there an element of hedging your bets with Perisic, thinking, well, I might lose my clean sheet, so I'll take some of the Neto points?
Well, perhaps, yeah. I just thought, it got to sort of, you were away, weren't you? But it got to Friday, and it became pretty certain that Perisic was going to start.
Yeah.
And I never really mind about playing two players against each other in the same game. To be honest, I'm not in control of it. I can't influence it other than sit back. But yeah, I just thought Neto could do more because he's a bit more of a forward than Andreas.
Yeah,
but I will play Pereira from now on if the fixture's good.
Just on Fulham, I thought they were fantastic. I thought Pereira and especially Mitrovic. How Mitrovic only got the one goal, I'll never know. I look at his fixtures. His fixtures are not brilliant, but Andreas is a 4.5 midfielder. It's just perfect to have there, on the bench. And I didn't play him this week. I played Nico Williams ahead of him, the same as Adam, which, you say it was a mistake or not. Nico Williams had a shot on target and one which just whistled wide as well and nearly had the clean sheet. So I wouldn't say it was a mistake as such. He just kind of landed the wrong way, but he looked superb. His corners, his free kicks, that really flat whip right on Mitrovic's head. Mitrovic and Pereira, I thought, looked superb. I took a -4. I got Ivan Tonian, so I was obviously really pleased.
Good decision.
Pleased that he returned, gutted his first finish, which was actually a better finish than the first. I thought was disallowed, but really, really happy to have him in. I played a 5-2-3. I think that might be the first time I've ever played it. And I benched Andreas and Bailey, and I also benched Almiron. So I had a fully scoring bench this week, and obviously all three of those on the bench I thought looked good, and I think are actually half decent options moving forward, especially now that Wilson is out for 2 or 3 weeks. But I'm probably getting rid of Almiron this week. I've been tossing up between getting rid of Almiron and Bailey, but I think looking at Bailey, how he performed last week, nearly scored, hit the bar as well, scored in midweek. I think I think Bailey's probably looking a better option longer term. But
I'd get rid of Bailey before Almiron personally.
Oh, really?
And I'll tell you why. This is only going on what I'm predicting is that I think Watkins has to start for Villa because I just think he's one of those players that makes other players look better as well. And I just think he's running and everything. So I think Watkins is certain to start. And I think we look terrible against Bournemouth without him. So and I read earlier as well, he's got 7 attacking returns in his last 9 games. So with Watkins starting, that means there's sort of 2 spaces left. I think Ings starts on the basis that we were that poor against Palace, and then the game before against Everton, he scored a goal and got an assist in midweek and looked very, very sharp. So I think that Ings starts. So, and we don't. I don't necessarily buy into whether West Ham will go. If they go 3 at the back, it probably increases the chances of that as well. But therefore, it's one position, and I don't think he goes. I think it's between Coutinho and Buendia, in my opinion. So I think Bailey's more effective. I think he's the sort of player that you can bring off the bench. He did it in pre-season against Man United. He did it in the week. He come off the bench, and when people were tired, he looked when he come on against Everton, he looked really good as well and created a great chance for Watkins. So I just think he'll start Ings over Bailey, and I think I would as well because he's under a lot of pressure at the moment, and the only time it's ever really worked for Gerrard is when he's gone with those 2 up front. Okay. So I think that's what I think will happen. So
good insight.
I I could be completely wrong because I don't think even Gerrard knows. No. And guessing Gerrard's quite harder than guessing Pep, I would suggest. But I think for that reason, I've ditched Bailey this week. So I can say from my own personal views, that was part of the thinking. I was fed up with guessing as well because there's nothing worse when you're having to guess constantly if a player is starting. So you're better off playing with certainty. And I think that's my reason for doing that. And I think Almiron, I've not seen the caveat I would throw in, other than the Villa game, the Villa goals, I've not seen any of the football from last weekend, so you can correct me. I'm just looking at stats I've looked at. I couldn't get access in Costa Rica because of all the viewing.
There were some very, very good matches last weekend.
I know, I missed it.
Definitely worth catching up on. Certainly City Newcastle was one of the best games of the season so far.
No,
that was excellent.
Yeah, no, I've heard that, and there were a few shock results in there as well. But yeah, I think that's what I would do. So I think I would keep Almiron over Bailey. And the fact Almiron scored and has looked quite good by all accounts as well. I mean, if only someone said that he was a great punter at the start of the season, I'd have been tempted to go for him.
Well, this is it. He gets into good positions. He's just not. Is his final ball? I think his final. I think he actually scored off his. I don't know what I'm allowed to say live on air. I think he actually scored off his private part. If you watch the goal, he lunges forward with like some kind of sexual thrust, and it goes in the bottom corner off it. But he's all right. I'll probably get rid over the coming weeks of both of them anyway because I think I've got my plan for this week, and I'll probably bring someone like Rodrigo maybe in the next game. I'm not bothered for bringing him in this week, but we'll see anyway. But no, I'm happy enough, I suppose. With my team looking fine for next week. Rank doesn't necessarily reflect it. 2.7 mil, but early days. There's only kind of 10 or 20 points between that and 500,000 or 100k or whatever else. So plenty to play for. Good afternoon to everyone in the chat. Ryan Lords, I'm 1974. Ross Johnson, Jan Kalioski, Fabio Dong, Dan Megan, Steve Wheeler, Colin Buger, Dudley Wilfred. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you with us this afternoon. Today, we will be looking at game weeks 4 and 5. We're not going to have a chance to come back before game week 5, which obviously kicks off on Tuesday. We will be doing Rich Pickings. Rich has got some fixture congestion, rotation risk, and talisman for us to take a look at. We will be intertwined with some Hopta Stats, courtesy of Adam. We will look at the best captain for Game Week 4, which is a massive decision. So many great potential options, both in 4 and 5. We'll look at the captaincy for Game Week 5 as well. We'll do Fergie is a punt. We'll look at our teams for Game Week 4, and we'll do our competition. But firstly, we are going to do the Violin moments of the week. Don't forget, if you want to join, if you want to be an honorary member of the Violin Club, make sure that you send in your Violin moments every week to @FFH Green Arrow, and you will be considered for honorary membership. Firstly, Davy Garnon on a wild card took out Aronson. Not too bad because he put Rodrigo in. But he left Rodrigo on the bench for Cucurella.
I was wondering where the violin was coming in.
For Cucurella. So, not too good for Davy there. Hillard Harriers benched Lewis Dunk 6-pointer, Andreas 8-pointer, and also an Aronson 8-pointer. So it was similar to us. I had a full house. You guys had 2 each, but Hillard Harriers there with a packed bench, and FPL Loza also packed Andreas. Packed? Playing FIFA. Also benched Andreas, but he also benched William Saliba of Arsenal for his 14-pointer. So a bit of a stinker there. Going forward to a couple of points, Catman Stu scored 23 points, which is a bit of a stinker, and also managed to bench 20, while Ross can trump that on the bench. Main team scored 45 points, benched 30 points. Ross Aldino there, so not great there. But the winner for this week, and this made me laugh, this was actually sent in my DMs, and there's 2 parts to it, which is what makes it funny. So this is off Ashley Wood. Early shout for worst week this makes. So he sent this at 2 minutes to 5 on Sunday. Okay, so bear in mind that time. That's half time in the new
City game. Yeah,
Newcastle Man City game. So he put early shout for worst week that I've wild carded into double Chelsea defence. He took out Aronson, brought in Ake. A few minutes before the deadline, he had Saliba, Perisic, and Tony in his team. He took them all out before the deadline. But then for me, the best part was he messaged me back an hour later to say, "Oh, and I took Trippier out as well," because obviously Trippier scored the second half
buried that free kick.
So, doesn't get much worse than that. So you are all honorary members of Violin Club. Make sure you send them in to @FFH Green Arrow for next week to become members yourself. Rich, on to Rich Pickens. What are we talking about this week?
Okay, right. So the theme for Rich Pickens this week is fixture crush. Sure that a lot of the listeners have noticed that there are 3 very tightly packed game weeks coming up in the next 8 days. We're going to get the game week this Saturday. Another one begins Tuesday night and runs till Thursday evening, I think, when United play Leicester, and then you're straight in a day later into game week 6. And as if that wasn't enough, we've then got the European competitions kicking off on the Tuesday of the following week. So actually, if you include the European action, you've actually got the teams playing 4 times in as close as 10 days for some of those teams. So a huge period of fixture congestion. It reminds me a bit of the second half of last season, the chaos we had, with 2 pods a week, 2 game weeks every 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be a lot of rotation. You've been warned here that you have team that you've had nice week between the matches for the last 3 weeks. There's going to be a lot of rotation, and ultimately it's the top sides which feature 80 to 90% of the players in our starting lineups who are going to be rotating the most. prior to those Champions League fixtures, those Europa League fixtures that they have. So, what does this really mean? It means we need to be careful, with transfers. It means we need to be careful with who we transfer in, and that actually some of the behaviours that we might have normally by running after a luxury transfer, might not be the best thing that we need to do. So really having a decent bench, we've just talked about leaving points on our benches last week, but if we've got injured players or non-playing starters on our bench, I actually think we're going to need players off our bench in the next 3 games, to actually score points for us, not just sit there and be a Violin moment. So it's really about looking at those fixtures and almost trying to second guess when certain players are going to get rotated and rested, because that might lead to our transfer strategies. Personally, I'm taking a 2 transfers into game week 5. I'm not going to spend them all this week. I think this is going to be really important going into Tuesday to have 2 free transfers. So saving a transfer this week, if you've still got one, is a good idea. So just play those basics. But I just think it's a time to be quite conservative with our lineups. I don't know whether you've got a graphic of the gaps between the games, Fergie. What have you got in front of the?
I don't have the gaps in the games, so I've currently got the fixtures of all the games. I can also get the fixtures of the top 6 teams. So if I go for the top 6 teams first, so we've got Arsenal. I've obviously got Fulham, Villa, and then Man United next. Liverpool, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Everton. I think for me, Man City with Haaland's interesting once they play Palace, obviously home to Forest midweek. I've seen a lot of talk, a lot of wildcards being played, and a lot of chatter obviously around taking out Haaland. And then Chelsea, United, Spurs, and also West Ham. Like they've all got so many games. So now all these 7 teams are now playing twice a week, I believe, for the next 6 or 7 weeks. So it's going to be absolutely constant with Europe as well. So when you say about your bench, Rich, are you players for me? So I'm thinking of my bench, players like Nico Williams, players like Herrera, etc. Are you saying you think we need a bench of 3, or what?
I'm not saying that. I don't think it's necessary to have 3, but I think there's often we talk about optimizing the value in the first 11 and making sure that we spent most of our money on the 11 starters that we've got. I think at this time, if you've got, say, 12 starters and you've got a rotating option each week, then that's a much stronger position going into three fixtures in 8 days, because the chances of one of those, say, rotatable defenders like Perisic or Cucurella or whatever missing a game is very high, and they may not come on, in which case you're good. If you've got a first bencher that has a chance of attacking returns, then sure, Pereira's fine. But if you've got, say, Neto or Bailey or someone of slightly higher value sitting in that bench 1 position, that's not a bad position to be in. Not saying go out and blow the budget on them, but if you have one, then maybe this week isn't the time to sell them, because you've got a chance of that cover and you've got a chance of those higher ceiling returns from that player coming on. That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah. What's your take, Adam, on how to approach the coming weeks?
My honest opinion is I actually don't think it's that much of a big deal as to what people are mentioning. Rich is right to raise it as a topic. It's been talked about a lot, but players are used to playing 3 times in a week. I don't really see it as a big thing. I think there's a couple of differences this year. So the 5 subs could help or hinder. So it might mean that you don't need your bench, but you're going to get a lot of 1-pointers and cameos. That is quite possible. But I don't really see it as a huge deal, because I think it will be the same teams that we expect that rotate. So really, if we're looking at this, I think you're looking at, I don't see Liverpool making wholesale changes. I don't see Spurs might do, but it'll be the wing backs. So you can look at there. Chelsea, there's going to be pressure for them to get results. So I don't see them making loads and loads of changes and completely changing the team. They might use their subs more wisely. And with City, we know, but their squad, looking actually at City and looking at their bench last week, says Pep only made one change, and that was bringing Ake on for Diaz. So he's moaned about the 5 subs quite a lot, but isn't necessarily using them at any opportunity. So, and I looked at their squad, and you know, it's not as deep as I thought it was when we're looking at, particularly with Grealish picking up an injury. And if he's not, you know, I don't know, we haven't seen the team news yet, but I don't know if he's back or what the situation is there. So I think personally, I don't think it's a huge issue. I think if we get news that where things to be aware of, if we get news that Haaland is very likely to be benched versus Forest, it might be that you want to look, because he actually name checked Alvarez, didn't he, when he was talking about Haaland? Is that, I'm right on that?
Yeah.
So I think I'm anyway. So there could be a play where if you know for a fact Haaland is going to get he's not going to start versus Forest, there could be a play to think, well, do you know, a wild card game week 6 or 7 and just take a risk with that Haaland, and I'll bring in Alvarez. I think that could be a way to consider. You might want to go Kane instead. You might just want to ride it out, because if Haaland gets 20 minutes off the bench with the sort of numbers he's posting at the moment, he could do some damage. So I think there's a few different ways you can consider it, but I don't think it's going to impact that many teams, in all honesty, because the other thing about this year, and this is only the start, we're only a few games in, but I think a few teams are really starting to work out how to play the big boys. There's a great article on it, and I haven't read loads over the last week being away. I've tried to stay off my phone and off social media and interact with my family and all of that. So, but there's, I think the teams like Brighton, and if you look at Brighton's start, West Ham, Newcastle and Man United, not the easiest to start, but how good have they looked? Newcastle have been, have started well. Leeds have started well. And I can foresee a season where teams are taking more points off each other. So the points distribution is going to be a lot more spread out. And I think a consequence of that is that teams are going to be fighting for points more. So they'll, they might think, well, there's an opportunity to play them a stronger lineup or giving players minutes. So I don't know. I don't think it's a huge thing, given that this happens every season, 3 games in a week. It's not really, we're not quite at the levels where we had like Leicester playing every 2 days last season, or Man United triple game week levels, are we? So I wouldn't really overthink it.
Well, the only other thing we haven't mentioned is that you got the transfer deadline thrown in the mix there in the middle of the week. So maybe in midweek, players that are subject to speculation of a move will not be played on that Tuesday or Wednesday fixture, because
good point.
They could be moved on. So that's another element of risk. So I guess, the reason brought it up, you were right to mention Haaland, because the whole thing that Pep said about Haaland is the sort of the big high profile player. I think if you've got that graphic up with the rotation risks there, Fergie, he's at the front because Pep has literally come out and overtly said he is not going to play 3 games in a row. He is going to start Alvarez. So we really do have a second guess situation on that one. If he plays this weekend, which most people probably think he will, he's either going to miss the Forest game, or he's going to miss the who they play after that. Palace, is it, or
Villa away?
Villa away.
Yeah.
Hopefully
you don't want to miss it. Yeah.
Play Alvarez against Villa. That's fine.
But if you know that he's going to miss one of the next 2, then if you've got a spare transfer, you could just flip him to Kane. In midweek,
you could.
or you could flip him to Tony. As you say, in which case you'd say, well, 180 minutes from Kane versus 70 to 80 for Haaland's got to be worth a bit of a gamble. So from there you could then walk through the other teams. So who's the next biggest risk? Well, Perisic is probably the next biggest risk not to play 3 out of 3 games. I've got him in my team, but I don't think he's going to get 3 starts. So would I transfer him out? Maybe not, but I might bench him in one of the games, in which case I need a decent midfielder to bring in. So just really increasing the attention to it in the next week, I think is important, and keeping your eye on on what's going on, and particularly who plays this Saturday to kick it off.
Yeah, I think the two you've just name checked there are the two big ones that I'd be concerned about. I'd be surprised if Perisic started all three, given that he's mentioned about trying to get his fitness up to the level where he wants it. And then Haaland, it's a tough one because Pep is quite stingy at using his substitutes. So I could actually see Haaland getting the night off versus Forest, particularly if they're
3 up or something.
Yeah, exactly. I could see that. So I think so probably framing this in I think looking at, at what point or what circumstances do we consider getting rid of Haaland, or do we say alternatively, because what you've just mentioned there is a really good tactic, because you could ditch Haaland for Kane in game week 5. So Kane's away at West Ham, who could be under massive pressure after they've lost to Villa the weekend, which we'll assume is going to happen. I said it very completely straight faced, but then after that, I think he's got Fulham at home, so he's got 2 great fixtures. Whereas Haaland would have, let's say, was not going to play Forest, then he's coming into the Villa game, which, to be fair, actually is probably quite a good fixture for him. So yeah, it's tough one whether to do it. And then I believe they face each other the weekend after that. So I think we can't really make a call on it until we see the Palace game. And I suppose it's the things that we're going to be looking out for. So Haaland coming off early is probably a good sign that he will have some minutes versus Forest. If he plays 90 and that, I mean, the other thing, if they drop points, that could make Pep think, do you know what, we've dropped points. I might have to start Haaland versus Forest at home, or I might have to give him minutes. We don't know, do we? Yeah. I think.
Well, we don't. But the other thing we're waiting for, I don't know if it's not come through yet, Fergie, has it? Is they've drawn City have drawn Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League, haven't they? There's no way Haaland's not going to play that game if it's first up, is it? So
he will, and I think he'll start all of the Champions League. I mean, let's face it, the Champions League's the thing that they want to win, and that's why they've bought Haaland. So yeah, until they're through, Haaland's going to be playing every champion. I think we can assume he'll play every Champions League game.
It sounds mad to sell Haaland. He's looked incredibly dangerous. Even in the game last week, scored the one, could easily have got another 1 or 2. I think for me as well, it comes down to captaincy, and I don't think I'll sell him this week in game week 4, even though not going to captain this week. But looking ahead to game week 5. He's probably, I would be, well, I'm not saying I'd be surprised if he started against Forest, but he's not going to be highly captained, is he? Because there'll be a lot of people concerned about him starting. So I think that kind of offsets a bit of risk there, particularly as Liverpool home to Newcastle, Arsenal also home to Villa as well. So they're, some pretty good captaincy options there. In game week 6, then Man City are away to Villa. Liverpool have got Everton. Arsenal have got Man United, and I believe Spurs have got Fulham at home. And then the week after, Spurs and Man City play each other. So I don't think you're going to captain Haaland probably up until the wild card, because they then got each other in 7, and then they're away to Wolves. In game
very assumptive. We're all wild carding in game week 8.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I suppose for the next 4 or 5 game weeks, Haaland is not going to be a highly captained option. Unless we get word that on Tuesday Pep says he's definitely playing against Forest, which he would never do or say anyway. So I do think Haaland out for game week 5 is it's
an option, isn't it?
But then it could be a differential if he starts. You could be laughing.
If you think, we've all got about, or generally speaking, we've all got about 7 or 8 players the same in our teams. The template has got those 7 or 8 players that aren't going anywhere for most people because they're performing and they're highly owned, and we're all waiting to do wild card, etc. The typical player listening to this has probably got those same 7 or 8 players. this is a chance to go a bit different, to break out the pack. And you're not completely wildcarding, but you're going Haaland to Kane. It's a big step. It's a premium change, captain change, and you could gain 20, 30 points for it. Equally, you could lose out, but it is a smaller risk than say wildcarding completely away from that template team now. So I just think it's a very valid play. And I'm thinking of doing it. I am thinking of doing it.
I'm thinking of something else, which I haven't ruled out, and I might even wildcard earlier. Hence why I bought that point. But Haaland isn't the one I'm particularly worried about, because I think
De Bruyne.
Well, it's Salah actually. I just think he's too expensive and he's not looking very good at the moment. Take him out of the equation. I think for Liverpool are. I think without Thiago and Fabinho in midfield, I think they're a different team. And without Man, I mean, they haven't been the same again since Mane's gone as well. And I worry about. I don't worry about Liverpool in terms of the season, but this year Salah hasn't been the same, and I think De Bruyne is a better option than Salah currently. So I'm not going to sell, just to be clear, I'm not going to sell Salah before the Bournemouth game. That would be silly. I've seen his record versus Bournemouth. He could easily get a brace or a hat trick in that game. But if he doesn't look great and he blanks, I would consider selling him before the Newcastle game and reassessing my options. If I was wild carding, I think it's hard before the Bournemouth game, but let's say, I think if I'm wild carding after that game, I'd be shocked if I had Salah. Subject to how he looks the weekend, but if that pattern's continuing, he hasn't been brilliant in 2022. Also, that's an unfair statement. It's more that the likes of De Bruyne, Son particularly last season, has been, or that Kane has actually been very, very consistent. So I think there's other options to look at.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I mean, going De Bruyne and Kane over Salah and Haaland could be interesting. I quite like that. As an option.
It's not for me. I mean, the fixtures, I appreciate all your points around, his form, Liverpool's form. I completely appreciate that, but it just seems one of those moves that Newcastle played very, they were very attacking against Man City. They played very well. Obviously, scored 3, conceded 3. They then got Everton away, which at the moment is a really, is a really nice fixture for Liverpool, just because of Everton's kind of, despair at the back at the moment, and then they're home to Wolves after that, which won't be easy again. But those 3 fixtures for me, Salah's easily captainable in 2 of those fixtures, and Salah proved it again last week against Man United. I don't know if you've seen the game, Adam, but
I've not seen the game, no, but
he's pretty anonymous, right? But he does what he always does. He's done it in the Community Shield. He's done it again in Game Week 1. So he didn't in Game Week 2. It's only when he hasn't. But he just always gets FPL points. He always finds a way to just squeeze in and get the goal. He always does it. He's just got this. He's an absolute.
It was very late, wasn't it? I mean, he actually saved pretty much 3 million people's game week with 10 minutes to go. It was only a consolation goal. United, definitely deserved the win, but that consolation for Salah made a huge difference to his owners' rankings, because he didn't do much in the game at all, but he still found a way to score points. And but yeah, his stats are down on several of the key areas. I think you got
that's the thing. So towards the end of last season, even when he was performing badly, if you looked at the expected numbers, they were right up there. They've not been the same since the start of this season. That could change. But if I look at certain stats, Salah always does well in. For example, shots, he's always top. He's always right up there, and particularly when you're looking at shots in the box. And his shots so far this season, I've just ordered. In fact, I've ordered it by shots in the box. Salah's he's had 7, whereas Mitrovic has had 14. Rodrigo's had 12. Jesus has had 10. If you do shots overall, those figures become even wider. So, and when you're looking at things like XG and other metrics, he's not up there. And I'm not saying, it's more of a case, he's the most expensive player in the game. So by getting rid of him, you can strengthen your squad. And I think in terms of captaincy options, I think there's an 8 million forward who I could see myself being quite happy captain in most weeks in Gabriel Jesus. I think he looks absolutely brilliant. And but you're realistically going to have a premium, whether it's De Bruyne or potentially two, whether it's De Bruyne, Kane, etc. So there'll be other options around him. But based on what I've seen of Liverpool so far and looking at the numbers, I don't think we should be afraid to sell Salah. I mean, I sold him at the end of last season, and it was one of the best decisions I made. Maybe not for one game week, but the subsequently what happened after that, it allowed me my rank just to go one way. Because I think with Salah in particular, there's this fear factor of selling him. So
I sold him in that week when I swapped him out for Bruno Fernandes because he had a double game week.
So I did that
scored
as well.
19 points.
Yeah, but I did that. But then I know you went back to him, and I pivoted and went to De Bruyne and Son. I didn't go to Son. I went to De Bruyne, and De Bruyne massively outscored Salah towards the end of last season. So I think there is just this fear factor around Salah more than any other player. People are scared to sell him. That's why he'll be the most captain. Like the captaincy argument this week. We'll talk about it later, but it just almost seems anytime you question against going against Salah, I think you're mad. But the reality is, Liverpool, they're not playing like they were, towards the end of last season, and particularly prior to him going away for AFCON. So I think you can look at other options. I mean, De Bruyne is the one that interests me. I think and I think with Haaland or not in the team, he's not slowing down in terms of his performances.
Okay. Speaking of Talisman in team, Rich, you just wanted to call out a few players. So like moving forward over the next kind of 4 or 5 weeks, we looked at like Brighton and Brentford and Leeds and Spurs and other teams who've got kind of really good fixtures. But in terms of looking at rotation risk against players who we know are probably going to play 90 minutes for their teams and have really good kind of scoring pedigree, you wanted to look at a few players.
Yeah. Just before I get into the detail, just a shout out to Tom Cantle, who got the assist. He writes an excellent piece every year on Talisman theory, which is an analysis of all the non-appearance points across all the teams, to see who really sticks out from each team as their effective talisman. And obviously, some teams have much more of their points concentrated around, one person or two people than others, where they spread the points around. But there are several key talisman. I think you've got a slide up with some familiar names on it at the moment who stand out as being, very good options for the next 2 weeks. And obviously, when you're going into, we just talked about rotation, and we've just talked about people being brought off early to save minutes. When you've got talisman in your side, they normally play 90 minutes a game, which is very useful. And when you've got that guy in your team, he's going to be the one who's on the penalties. He's going to be the one who's on taking most of the shots and scoring most of the FPL points. So it's a way of shoring up your team from a captaincy option perspective, making sure you've got someone in there who you can be relied upon, at times when several of your other players, like, I don't know, Perisic, Cucurella, Haaland, etc., might be rotation risks and might not play at all. So that's the point here. So I took a look at which talisman have decent fixtures, particularly in the next 3, and that's why some of them are on this slide. So we've got Zaha at the front of the queue there. I think he's a really, really good pick for next week. I know they play City away. He scored against Liverpool away with a breakaway goal. No reason why he can't do that against City. But, you're going up against the best defence there in the league. May not get anything this week. So it's not a mandatory thing to bring in this week. But from next week, Palace's fixtures pick up, particularly up till the popular wild card period. And I think Zaha at 7.1, I think, is a great shout for a midfield upgrade. He's probably the standout one, for me. Jimenez is really Wolves' talisman historically. He's come back into he's played the League Cup game. I expect him to start at the weekend. Wolves' fortunes may well pick up. So they've got 3 nice fixtures: Newcastle, Bournemouth, Southampton in the next 3. He's worth a mention. Mitrovic hasn't got great fixtures, but he has got the form and he has got the stats underpinning him. So if you're looking at going for a third striker option, Mitrovic, if you can't quite stretch to Ivan Toney, who's also on the slide, Mitrovic at 6'6" is another real talisman option. So you're just getting that surety of minutes plus the potential of upside scores. So I just really think it's a good time for talisman theory.
Yeah, I agree. And like I mentioned earlier, if Mitrovic's fixtures were just a bit nicer, he'd be in my team. Adam, watch match of the day from last week and just watch Mitrovic. He's just unreal.
Do you know what? I think it's a good thing his fixtures aren't that good, because if his fixtures were good, he'd probably be 80% owned, or he'd loads and loads of people would go that way. I don't know how much of a. I think he can score versus anybody and give anybody. Who's he got? So he's got Chelsea coming. Brighton, okay, that's a tough one, but they're not brilliant at defending set pieces on the whole. So you could. I don't know. I think. I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out. I watch him this weekend, but I do like the Mitrovic move. I think he's. I posted some stats on Toney, which we'll talk about in a minute. I like Toney, but I think if you're watching a game and you had a choice of owning Toney or Mitrovic for me, I would much rather, because he's just involved in everything Fulham do. Toney is a very good player. He links up play nicely and he ticks along nicely. But in terms of absolute goal threat, Mitrovic is is the man, really. If you look at, I mean, when I was mentioning some stats earlier about the number of shots, it probably no surprise who's number one is Mitrovic.
Well, he probably had half of them in the last game week because he was everywhere.
Well, but he did. I mean, he did all right. He's done all right consistently, I think, in all of them. But he's had 15 shots in 3 game weeks, 14 in the box. This is the big one. 6 big chances. There's only Haaland who has had 7, who's had more. I think for me, I'm trying to find a way to get him in. I was looking at Toney, but I think the price makes it a little bit more challenging. But I think Mitrovic, I'd have no issue with his fixtures at all.
Haaland and Mitrovic in game week 5.
Could be. Big. If you've got an 8 million midfielder, you can go anywhere, can't you? From there.
Yeah, potentially. I'm not ruling it out. But I mean, we've obviously got some more fixtures to watch. I think if I was wildcarding, I would have Mitrovic without question.
Okay.
It's tough because I think most would go Toney, but I would probably go Mitrovic over Toney.
Which of those do you fancy, Fergie?
I test Mitrovic and Zaha. I think have been superb, both on penalties as well. Zaha, just the way he looks so full of. He just looks full of beans at the moment. He's so rapid. He's on pens. He gets chances every game. He's so quick. He always attacks the left centre back with his runs, as he did against Liverpool, as he did, for the goal he scored on the weekend. You got Kane on there. I do wonder whether we may start to see. I don't think that Kane will be rested this week over the 3 games, but moving forward, he's not going to play 90 minutes for me every game now that Richarlison's in. I think one of the main reasons why he has been is there hasn't been anyone. We've been talking about Dane Scarlett and Vinicius. They're just not good enough to start Premier League games, whereas Richarlison is. So I do think that he's going to get.
I think Kane's more vulnerable to Richarlison than Son is, do you?
No. I think that Son will as well, but kind of looking at the talisman, I think that Kane will probably not see as many minutes. He's not going to be as flogged as he has been in previous years.
Interesting. I mean, I think Kane's probably the ultimate talisman. He's England's talisman. He's like, Spurs. I've never known a game that he's not started, unless he's been injured. I've never known a game he's not started, and I've hardly ever known him ever get brought off.
No, but they got Conte now. They've got a better squad. They're in the Champions League, so I think all those things combined, especially the depth part, right? They've got they've got players now who can actually play. So yeah, it's interesting, and obviously Ivan Toney as well looks really good. And you had some stats, Adam, on Toney, didn't you?
Yeah. I'll come back to Toney in a second. So prior to the two that you mentioned, Mitrovic and Zaha, I think they are the ultimate talisman. Absolutely. Just I think in terms of the goal involvement, playing 90 minutes, taking penalties, whether they miss them or not, I just don't see. I think they've got that little bit of selfishness and swagger. I think Toney's just a little bit off them. I think in terms of, I think other players at Brentford get involved as well as Toney, but I can see both of those two really, really hogging the points. I looked at, so just going on to your points. So are we moving into the stats element now? Or
yeah. Go ahead.
Segue smoothly into.
Yeah, I did look at. So I've looked at both Toney. The two players that have really been interesting me are Toney and Zaha. And Zaha, and this is why you've got to look at just more than stats and try and balance it out. Because I think the manager's comments, Vieira's comments on him, I think Eze being in the team, from what I've seen in terms of highlights, he seems to be really on his game and the form of his life. And I think he's going to be the ultimate talisman. I think he'll be involved in most of the goals. He's actually, year to date, since the turn of the year, he's massively underperformed his expected assists. I don't think he's got a single assist, but he's been creating chances. So that maybe shows that the rest of his team can't be relied to finish. But the one thing I did find interesting about Zaha, and I've just put this out there, I posted this on Twitter earlier, and he's very, very much under consideration to come into my team for Mount next week, is that he scored this year, 2022. It's been well documented. He's got 12 goals, which is more than anyone other than Kane and Son. But what should be said is that 5 of those goals have come as a result of penalties, which so he's missed 3 penalties. So 2 of those goals were rebounds, 3 penalties. So he scored 7 in open play, which is absolutely fine. But when you break down his XG and you take out all of the penalty actions, so I've got it here, actually. It's quite so XG in 2022 is 9.02. Brilliant, quite good. He's got 12 goals from it, probably the sort of level I'd expect in terms of overperformance, there or thereabouts for him anyway, because he scores a lot from tighter angles, etc. But 4 points, but only 3.47 of that 9 has come from stuff which hasn't involved penalties, either penalties or rebounds. So he's obviously, his goal versus Villa, I think technically it was more than one, because he's missed the penalty and put the rebound in, and they're both equal more than, so a combined equal more than one. So I think when I look at the stats, that worries me a little bit. I think he'll keep penalties. But you've got to rely on Palace still continuing to get them. But I think when you read what's being said, he's the main talisman, everything's going through him, and the feel good factor and confidence, I think he's a good option. But it was just the stats which slightly worried me, that has he been over reliant on penalties. Toney, on the other hand, got some really interesting stuff on Toney. So Ivan Toney, first 16 matches in the Premier League. So this took him up to the 1st of January. So I've looked at up to the 1st of January and January after. His non-pen XG and his expected assists per 90 was 0.38. So it was okay, not bad, fairly good. He'd only had 1 goal in open play. So in his first 16 matches, I think he got 2 goals and 4 assists, but only 1 goal in open play. The 20 matches that have gone on since, he has scored 10 goals and 5 assists. and his non-pen XG plus XA is up to 0.62. So it's a massive jump. So I think he's really adapted to the Premier League. Very good on bonus points because of the big chances he creates for people. So I think he's a very, very good option, particularly when you're looking at some of the stats and with his fixtures coming up. I wanted to get him in, but I just can't. Without
difficult with a 4-4-2 to move to it, isn't it?
I could have done it, but it would have mean ditching Mount versus Leicester and not going to Zaha. And I think I've got if I'd have had an easier route to Tony, I would have gone Tony over Zaha. But I think given my setup, I think this is where you have to make decisions of which player do you go for. And mine would be Zaha, either Tony with loads of hits, with a few hits, or Zaha. And I think they're both good options. So there's a couple of stats there. I think another few stats that I've looked at this week is everyone is talking about captaining Salah. I get it. And it is hard to go against Salah, Bournemouth at home. So I'm probably still going that way. But when you look at the numbers, look at big chances conceded, Bournemouth have only conceded 5 big chances, which surprised me. And, they've played Arsenal, they've played City as well. Whereas Fulham have conceded 9 and they've got Arsenal at home. So Arsenal away even. And I think if you think about how those two teams will go into the games, you'd think Fulham, could they go toe to toe with Arsenal? Can they try and get something? They're going to really try and score. Whereas you can imagine Bournemouth, it's just going to be a couple of buses, isn't it, parked in front of the goal, making it quite difficult for Liverpool. They're going to try and make it difficult. Probably won't offer much going forwards, which could be good for people with double Liverpool defence. So I think that was another stat that I've looked at. And then just finally, the looking at what's happened so far, as sort of a bigger picture, is for both expected points and FPL points, we haven't got a defender in the top 10. I think the highest defender in terms of expected points, that's the metric we use on Hub, which factors in what, looking at expected goals, expected assists, expected bonus, expected clean sheets, all of these things, and gives the players a score. And it's usually quite a good indicator. You probably want 5 or 6 game weeks worth of data about what's going on, what teams are doing well, what players are doing well. But there's no defender anywhere close to the top 10. I think the highest is Diaz of City at number 14, which again, that surprised me. But the Trent, Cancelo, all of those guys are absolutely nowhere near. Mm-hmm. So that, I think that is quite interesting. That's replicated in FPL points as well, and hence why we're talking about the likes of Zaha, Mitrovic, Tony, all of
moving
these
to 3-4-3 setups and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I can see the argument. Do we think this is going to change? It possibly could. When Champions League comes back, it might become more disciplined. It might have calmed down more, which I think does tend to happen. We often see at the start of the season, a lot of strikers get excited and score fairly well. So that could happen. But so that, I thought that was quite interesting. And then looking at it in terms of big chance involvements, and this is one of the ones I wanted to highlight. So Haaland's had 9 so far. Wow, which is, I think he's had 7 big chances and create 2, which is huge. Darwin's had 6 and he's only played, limited minutes. So if you looked at minutes per big chance involvement, God, that guy is, he's one to be on our radar for when he returns from suspension. So potentially for Walker, I think he's an interesting option. You've got Kevin De Bruyne, I think, has got 6 as well. So I think he got 6 or 7. So yeah, he's got 6. So he's created most big chances. But so he's created 5 big chances so far. So we're seeing the trend of him and Haaland dominating that. Nobody else is even close to Kevin De Bruyne. So the second most, I think somebody's got 3 off the top of my head, which I think is Trent. So Harrison's got 3, and then Trent and Kulusevski, Kane and Mbeumo. And Perisic even have got 2. So I think, and then if we go all the way down, so Salah has had 3 big chance involvements. If you look at the big difference, so Haaland 9, Salah 3. Again, there could be a real, an option to captain Haaland this week based on that.
Yeah, I think he's top of the odds, isn't he, Fergie? I'm going to come on to that. But I think,
we'll have a look at captaincy
just
next.
About shades it, I think.
I think it's interesting point about defenders not doing well. I think we mentioned it in the Game Week 1 preview how it was going to be a really interesting season because nearly all the big teams, or all the teams in the top 5 or 6, have all had to kind of reinvent themselves. If you look at kind of Liverpool without Mane and having kind of Núñez and Diaz, if you look at Man City having Haaland, he's obviously fantastic, but obviously they sold Sterling. What else have they sold? They sold another winger, Jesus
Zinchenko.
And Zinchenko. So they've undergone some kind of surgery there. Chelsea's defense, has had to be kind of reinvented. There's only Spurs really who hadn't sold anyone big or had like a major change in it, in their starting 11. And I would also say that I do think that the standard of Premier League football, just watching matches, watching highlights, looking at teams like Brighton, even I've mentioned them numerous times, Fulham on the weekend.
Newcastle,
Leeds this season, West Ham
Palace
last season, Palace this season. I think the standard of Premier League football is massively improving across, and I don't think there's this massive disparity anymore. I mean, Man City will probably win the league, right? And the top 4 will probably be what it is, but I don't see a massive 30-point gap down to Brighton, Newcastle. I think it'd be a lot closer, and I do think that the teams, the quality of football, the quality of the matches we're watching, they're so entertaining. They're so good, and it'll get to a point, right, when when teams start to have injuries, that we'll see this Man City, making however many hundreds of passes, against teams' blocks, but at the moment, it's just absolutely superb to watch. And I think that's the reason why people are like Tony, Mitrovic. Both of those had outstanding seasons in the Championship, which doesn't normally translate well to Premier League goals, but they are now as well. So I just think that the standard of the Premier League generally is improving massively.
I completely agree with that point. And as I said earlier, I could see a season where the points tally's a little bit more spread, and we're not seeing teams run away with it with Liverpool and City get 90 odd points, 95 odd points. I think the coaching that is happening at the moment, and this is one of my big frustrations with Villa, is that squad wise, you look at it, we've got a stronger squad than Brighton, we've got a stronger squad than Palace and loads of other teams in and around us, but the coaches of I think you're seeing Jesse Marsch doing it at Leeds. He's got a really clear way he wants to play. That's why he brought Aronson in. And you listen to it. I mean, I don't know if you listen. I heard it on the radio about how he pressed Mendy and deliberately almost fooled him into doing that. I think it's just great. It's not just running. There's a lot of thought put into it. I think Potter's tactics have been brilliant. It's great to see Newcastle going toe to toe with City and almost beating them. So. Yeah,
I've got a stat for you here. This that supports points both of you just made, right? So, of the 30 matches that have been played so far, there have been 14 home wins. Okay, 7 away wins and 9 draws. Now, that sounds to me like that might be fairly normal correlation, but that is the key thing about those home wins, right? Is that only 4 of those home wins have come from top 5 sides, right? Wow. So City have won 1, Arsenal have won 1, and Spurs have won 2. Chelsea haven't won any, and Liverpool haven't won any, right? So those are 5 teams which actually make up 90% of our squads currently. What that really says to me is that obviously any team in this league, based on what you both just said, can win at home. Yeah. Any team is capable of winning at home because of their supporters, the crowds are back in the stadiums, they're fit and they're firing and they're motivated. And basically what we've seen now, particularly last week when you're away, Adam, was the top 3 teams just didn't perform. They let in 8 goals. They were all away from home, and they struggled. They really struggled. I think one of them got a draw, I think, but the others both lost. So basically, we've got to start considering players from these other teams, these mid-table teams, teams that started the season well. There's no issue. I've seen a lot of teams are still trying to get that. You can, because of the prices, get 11 players from those top 5 teams into your squad, but that may not be the right way to go. You're ignoring the value and the form elsewhere,
and the expected minutes as well.
Exactly, and it completely backs up what you both just said.
The other thing, you're absolutely right in all the points you just mentioned. And I think the other point that supports it, we only have to look at Forest spending this year, don't we? Was it 148 million or whatever they're up to now? What we're seeing is that the Premier League is the place to be. It's where the money is. It's often very difficult for Premier League teams to get rid of their players because of the wages that they're on. So therefore, it seems that some of these top quality players are coming to the Premier League, which is making the league stronger. And, City, Liverpool, etc., have always been able to get who they want anyway. So I think the gap is definitely closing in terms of quality when you factor in the level of coaching as well. And we've talked about, whipping boys. Who is the whipping boy this year? A few people are saying Forest, a few people are saying Bournemouth, but I think Bournemouth might struggle, but apart from that, I think
no one's had 3 really poor performances. Maybe Everton, I suppose. I think Everton are going to go down, but it's early days, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. They've not been, and even with Everton, they've not really been embarrassed. They've been competitive in all 3 games that they've been in. Yeah. So
they just haven't got any attack, have they? That's the only issue. Yeah.
There seems to be an intensity
no one's getting whipped.
in every match I watch, especially the kind of mid to lower table sides. There just seems to be this intensity, the real fire and hunger. And I've been really, really impressed. The only ones that I haven't seen that from were Man United against Brentford, really. That's the only performance where you think, flipping heck, they were dreadful. But other than that, even the kind of middle of the road matches, even the teams down the bottom, I'm actually really enjoying them play football, which normally, when you've got a Burnley versus Southampton, right? Normally, awful.
It's a garden centre game, isn't it?
Whereas Fulham and Brentford last week was absolutely sensational, and as was Southampton when they beat last
Leicester.
week? 2-1 Leicester. It's just toe for toe, really attacking, great football. Anyway, really good stuff there. So you touched on earlier, Adam, about captaincy. Just look at the captaincy for game week 4. If we look at the hub points prediction tool, Salah top 9.3, unsurprisingly, home to Bournemouth, as we've said. He is also top of the polls by massive amounts, so 75% of the vote are going for Salah. However, the bookies odds checker who we've partnered with think Haaland has a better chance as anytime goal scorer. So he's 4-7 on Salah 4-6, so it is quite close. Jesus 20-21, so roughly even money, as is Kane. So there's some, big, and I believe they're all playing. No, he's away in Kane, but there's some massive players playing at home with really good fixtures this week. Rich, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on the captaincy for game week 4?
I think it's very open again. I think if I was wild carding, I would be quite tempted with the Kane pick. I think I'd probably bring Kane in over Haaland and captain him away to Forest. Is it Forest they play?
Yeah.
That's a good pick, even though he's 4th on that list there. I've taken in a lot of what Adam has said about Salah's dip in statistics, and I've seen quite a lot of content this week that correlates with that. I'm still going to captain him against Bournemouth. I don't think you get a better home fixture, and I'm still. That's going to be where I'm not going to put money on it, but that's going to be where I go this week with my pick. I just think he's safe at home. I think Liverpool, their performances are questionable. I've only got 2 Liverpool players now, and I'm quite happy with that situation. But I will still captain Salah, just because of his reliability and his track record.
Adam, captain for game week 4? Yeah, I think there's a number of good options. So that's why I'm surprised that Salah's the runaway, and it seems to be the case. So I think Kane away at Forest would be a really, particularly with his record against newly promoted teams. I think would be a great captain shout. Although I'm sure the Forest home support will make it tough for Spurs. Haaland we can't look Haaland and De Bruyne. The stats that we just looked on big chances. That Haaland been involved in 9 in 3 games. What's that? 3 a game he's involved in.
He's only been doing 70 minutes a game as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, exactly. And he was quiet against Bournemouth. So he's had 1 game off, really, hasn't he? So, so when you're looking at the stats and numbers this season, it's hard to make a case for Salah. The reason that I think people are looking at it is that historically his record against Bournemouth is as good as anyone's record against anyone. It's incredible. So I think that's a big plus for Salah. I think the fact he's a midfielder helps with all the expected points metrics, because you'd expect Liverpool to keep a clean sheet. So he's already starting 1 point up on Haaland and Jesus. So I think and then, gets an extra point per goal. So I think if he was a forward, I think more people would be inclined to go elsewhere. I think the fact he's a midfielder really aids his expected points. I also do think that looking at where's Liverpool's goals going to come from, you're probably only looking at really with Diaz or Salah. So you haven't got, like, for example, when last season we had Mane, Jota, Diaz, all on. So I think I probably will go with Salah, but I do think that's more based on I think the midfield element is a big thing, and you'd expect a reaction from Liverpool. But if people wanted to say they wanted to go with Jesus or Haaland or Kane, I can't really argue. I think what I would say is if you go against Salah this week, it is the best way to get a big green arrow or a big red arrow. I'm not saying which way it's going to go, but that'll be the way that if you've got a real big hunch on Kane, Haaland, Son, Jesus, back it, because that swing could be quite big. And I saw it in positive and negative last season when I didn't own Salah at certain times, but it's quite fun. Just don't watch the Bournemouth game. That's all I'd advise.
That's the thing, isn't it? I do wonder if Foden had have squared the 2 passes to Haaland for easy tap-ins, which he should have done I think it was game week 1 and game week 3. Just easy square 6-yard ball for Haaland tapping into an empty net, whether we would be thinking a little bit more around Haaland for the captaincy because but all those stats are without those, obviously, because they wouldn't have counted towards Haaland at all. But if Foden had just squared him back twice it's happened. I just surely Pep must give it an absolute rollicking.
I've got a question for you two, because I've not seen I didn't see the football from last weekend. How did Haaland look? Because I've seen the stats. Stats look pretty encouraging. How did he look from an eye test point of view?
Yeah,
it's good. Yeah,
he had 1-on-1. He tried to do the same, where he kind of flipped it onto his left foot, but the keeper rushed out and saved it. He obviously had the snapshot for the goal. He does stay very central and gets kind of crowded in there a bit, I think, which will be good for maybe players like Gundogan potentially. We haven't mentioned him yet, but it's a good option. But he's just so clinical. He's just there. He will always get chances, and he will always score goals. Every game he plays in, he fancies him to score a goal, and this is the thing with him. With all that talent around him as well.
Good game. Much busier game than the previous week, where he was very quiet. It certainly didn't look like he was somebody you'd want to sell anytime soon. But it was a cracking game, and Newcastle deserved something from it. It was not a all one-way traffic. It was a real end-to-end game. It was a great game.
I think the Man City started off the better team and quite dominant. got the goal, and then Newcastle came right back into it. But it was very end to end, which is why I'm quite excited for the Liverpool Newcastle game, because I'm expecting a similar game, because it doesn't look like Newcastle are going to sit back. They're going to play, which will be great, because I fancy them to score a goal or two against Liverpool. But it also means, obviously, there'll be some holes at the back that, if Salah and Co can get their acts together, that should be another pretty high scoring game there.
Don't you think maybe the crowd had a lot to do with it? Because the week before against Brighton, they weren't that good, were they?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, no, the home. It's back to the home game thing again.
Yeah, I exactly. I think it does make a big difference.
It's a big difference.
Just looking ahead really briefly to game week 5, obviously, because we won't be back before then, but unsurprisingly, Haaland and De Bruyne top of the shop for the expected points. Obviously home to Forest. Now, we have adjusted, I think we've adjusted Haaland's expected minutes since, so he was on 80, we've adjusted down to 70 at the moment, because we think that's probably reasonable. So he will be a little bit lower than this, but he will be up there, right? So Adam, I'll come to you first on this one. In terms of captaincy, so obviously Kane is, I haven't got them in front of me, but Kane's away.
Kane's got West Ham away.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd go there. I just think that, I think there's better options. Jesus has got Villa at home. I'm reluctant to go there for obvious reasons. I don't really want to have to do that. So it comes down to really Salah and Haaland. I think the best captaincy option personally is De Bruyne for that week.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I agree with you.
I think I made the point, and this still stands. Is I posted that tweet out, and his home. Look at De Bruyne's home record for City; it's just incredible. And if we think he's more likely to start, I think he could be the best captaincy option. But I think a lot of it will depend. I think a lot of our decisions for game week 5 will depend on what happens in game week 4. How players look, stats people post, minutes being managed, all of those things. So it's really difficult to nail my
colours to the mast.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Cheers, Rich. Yeah. It's difficult to do at this stage.
Just before we look at Fergie is a punt and our team, just a couple of players we haven't really mentioned yet. Just on your thoughts on Gundogan and Rodrigo, obviously been talked about a lot this week. Really potential, really good options going forward. Rich, what are your thoughts on those two players at the moment?
Well, Gundogan, yes, I think is a good option if you can't, if you haven't got two City defenders, if you've got a spare City slot and you can afford the move, then Gundogan is obviously the captain now, which was voted for by the players, I think. So it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to start every game, but because there are fewer to choose from, I think he's going to play 2 out of the next 3. I would have thought. Scored against Newcastle, I think, and basically he's a really good option at 7.6. Yeah, I really like him as an option. I probably would have bought him, but I was short. I was 200 or 300k short this week. I would have probably gone for him, but I bought someone else, and it's the player you mentioned. Oof. So I've even made an early transfer. So There we are. So I bought in Rodrigo.
Okay.
And I bought him on Wednesday evening. So I guess that says enough, doesn't it? In terms of the just jump a bandwagon I decided to jump on. Yeah.
Adam, Rodrigo?
Well, I did exactly the same. I'd use it as an option to get rid of Leon Bailey.
Yeah, I did the same transfer.
I'm not 100% sold on him as a long-term option. And he's obviously overperformed his XG, but I think what people haven't even mentioned is he's got 4 goals in 3 games. Is that right? But he also got a hat-trick in the last pre-season match as well. So he's on absolute fire at the moment. And I just think at his price, he just
don't overthink it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think for the next 3, I mean, I don't particularly like the Brighton fixture, but I think after that, but after that. They've got a great run of fixtures. So
why have you done it this week then? Is it purely because of price rises?
So you go first, Rich.
Well, it's not because of price rises. I don't normally react to them at all. I mean, my midfield is the kind of the weak spot in my team. I don't have an 8 million midfielder. I've had the Bailey and Neto combination, which neither of which are, really pulling up any trees. And, we don't know whether Bailey's going to start. Got Andreas, yes, but he's still not necessarily somebody you want to start every week. So, apart from that, and everyone has Salah and Martinelli. So that's just neutralized. I haven't really got any third, midfielder that I can rely on, as a short-term 5-week move until this likely wild card. I just think Leeds' form, his fixtures are great. And yes, you will make a small amount of money in terms of profit out of him if he continues to perform. Brighton, yes, it's a difficult game, but they're not Manchester City, they're Brighton. So I'm going to start him against Brighton.
Exactly.
So that's fine.
I had the choice. So part of the decision that I made was because I was on holiday and I had 0.1 of being able to do Diaz to Dunk or any Brighton defender, and Bailey to Rodrigo. And I thought, I want to enjoy my holiday. I don't want to be checking price rises every day. I think he's the player that I would want next week. So, I don't, as I've said, I don't think Bailey starts, or I think I don't want to be guessing his minutes. And Brighton come into a nice run of fixtures as well. So I think Dunk will offer good value. A lot of people have gone Sanchez alternatively in the Brighton defence. So I just thought the moves, as for the next 3 or 4 weeks were better. I think, that's basically taking out Diaz and Bailey. And there were questions over Diaz not starting Newcastle. Now that probably changed because of Ake's injury, but I don't think he's been great, Diaz, in all honesty. I think he's been quite shaky. I mean, Newcastle scored 3, so I've not watched his performance, but it doesn't. Yeah,
they didn't look great when he came on. He certainly didn't shore them up or anything.
Yeah, so I think for me, and I'm just looking at the numbers, Rodrigo's head and shoulders above. So going, and I've tried to take out the fact of the goals he scored, but just going back to the numbers we were talking about. So top for shots was Mitrovic with 5. Rodrigo's had 13. So he's right up there. 6 on target, 12 in the box. And I was considering the Tony move, but if I'm comparing him to Tony, so Tony's had, I think he's had 5 shots this season compared to Rodrigo's 13. And I just thought it was worth a short put. It sort of suited my structure as well to be able to make that move. It was a bit harder for me to make that forward move and solve problems. So his price was a big factor. I think at 6.3 million when I got him. So yeah, I would have ideally liked to have waited a week, but I probably would have been priced out of it, and it'd have cost me an extra hit and all of it if I would have wanted to go down that route. I think Harrison looks a good option as well.
Harrison is a good option if you can't quite stretch. Definitely.
But I might double up. I mean, I'll look at Mount this week. He either does brilliant and gives me a decision as to whether I keep him or not. But if he doesn't, I could double up on Leeds. I could potentially look at Zaha. So there's loads of this for Mount. So I think I'd likely spend less than 8 million because I've not been that impressed with the 8 million midfielders so far.
Like Rashford as well.
Well, I did consider Rashford, but I thought
you should watch the highlights of that game as well, because like I say, he was he's, if United play that way every week, which we know they don't, they tend to have these massive one-off performances and then die away again. But if they do look like they're going to go on a bit of a run, their fixtures are pretty decent. I think.
I think it's Fergie. I want to see them win a couple of away games first.
No,
they've been shocking away from home. They've been
agree.
absolutely shocking.
So the next 3, they're away to Slam, away to Leicester, and then they got Arsenal, which will be some tough tests. Away to Palace, and then I think they want a bit of a run then. So we can wait and see. But 6.3, if they do turn it around, and he does play as number 9 or even on the left hand side, and he gets into a bit of form, he could be good.
I agree. Potentially Martial might come into our thinking. Definitely. I think there are some really good attacking options, sort of below 7 million at the moment. So yeah, I agree. I just agree with Rich's point as well. It only feels like we've got one data point on Rashford looking good, whereas Rodrigo.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I factor in the friendly as well, the fact he got a hat trick in that it's 4 games in a row. He's looked razor sharp. Now, I don't think he'll keep that up, but do I think he will? Look, for what is it, 6.3 million? I'm probably wanting 5 points a game from him from about that amount. Bear in mind, I won't captain him. So do I think he's capable of getting that? Yeah, definitely.
There's a couple of people in the chat are just saying Martial is out, which would be interesting because it could even mean that Martial plays up top, which would be quite interesting. Okay. So let's move on. Fergie is a punt. So this is my weekly punt and the 1%
The best part of the pod.
The best highlight of the show.
Well, last week I went for Solly March. Solly March did have 2 shots in the box and a big chance. He got a clean sheet point, didn't get the returns, sadly. But this is the whole thing about it being a punt. But the signs were there, which is positive. We are going to change. Can I
make a request? Yes. Can I just make sure you do not pick anybody that's currently in my team?
Whoa, we will see. Or maybe someone you're bringing in. No, it won't be. It won't be because at the moment the rules I've got to pick someone under 1% owned.
Yeah.
So this week, the clues are this chap has had 4 shots in the first 3 game weeks, 3 shots in the box. He's got the 3rd best attacking stats for his team. He was mentioned a little bit in pre-season. He's only 0.2% owned. And the reason I'm going for him this week is he's playing a team whose stats are well in the bottom 3 for all key defensive stats. So he is a punt. He's a 1-week punt for this week. I think from next week we were chatting just before we went live around maybe giving the punts a few more weeks because obviously Armour on his kit. He came good last week, didn't he? Scoring off his knob. But my punt for this week, I wanted to go for Xhaka because there were some comments from Arteta around Xhaka's positioning, playing further forward. Sometimes he's on set pieces. Obviously got the assist for Saliba last week. But when I checked Xhaka's ownership, it was 2.7%, which I was absolutely stunned by. But this guy's 0.2%, and it is Yohan Wissa of Brentford, who a few people were talking about pre-season. He does pop up with the odd goal, playing Everton at home in game week 4. He has come off early a few times. I think he came off like 70 odd minutes. But I fancy him. I fancy him this week to do the stuff against Everton. So that is my punt for game week 4. What are your thoughts, chaps?
Yeah, I think it's better.
Better than Dendoncker in game week 2.
Speaking of underwhelming,
yeah. Are you allowed to recycle any? Because I think you got Alvarez versus Forest, haven't you?
Yeah.
Or have you not had Alvarez actually?
I didn't have Alvarez. No, he'll be the one for game week 5. I would guess. He's actually dropped again. He's down to 6.2 now. He's dropped 0.3. He dropped last night. So yeah. But obviously I picked Almiron in game week 1. He scored last week, but he's the only one really. March has done okay. Dendoncker, I think, was actually benched last week, so he was a bit of a disaster. But I'm back in Visa.
I'll be honest, all of I can understand all of them other than Dendoncker. I just couldn't understand that one.
Just a 1-week stat. But this one, so the next 4
he
games,
did well, didn't he, as well?
Everton, Palace, Leeds, and Southampton.
Yeah.
Fancy Visa to do.
Yeah, no, good shout.
Not a bad player. He has scored 4 or 5 goals last season. I think
has he gone down in price since the start of the season?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
What is his price, Fergie?
He was 5.5, but I don't know.
Hang on.
5.5.
No, I don't have it in front of me. Rich, we've now got your team in front of us for game week 4. Yeah. So you've already given us a bit of a hell of a spoiler.
Yeah, sorry, he's gone to 5.4, by the way.
Okay.
Makes him even better.
So, do you want me to run through it? Yes, Ramsdale in goal. I still have a transfer to use. Haven't completely ruled out swapping him for Sanchez, but I think I'll hold him for Fulham. And then I'm going to play all 5 of my back 5. All have good games. Perisic, I hope, starts against Forest. I've got the 2 Chelsea boys who I'm expecting a far improved performance on last week's thrashing at Leeds. Cucurella and James. And then Trent and Cancelo completes the back 5. A stronger 3 in the middle now with Salah, Martinelli and my new boy, Rodrigo. And then the template 2 up front, Jesus and Haaland. So team's pretty template still. probably my differentials are still slightly maybe Perisic, the two Chelsea in defence, and Rodrigo, but probably all of them now are getting up over 20% owned. So it's very template. I don't expect to make huge amounts of ground with this, especially if I captain Salah, but I probably won't lose much ground either. It's just going to be a peloton week for me, I think.
Yep. Okay. Let's look at your team, Adam. A couple of changes made already.
Yeah, I've done it. So I have done, as I think I mentioned it earlier, I've done Diaz to Dunk and Bailey to Rodrigo.
Okay.
There are a few others that I considered. Like I said, Tony, if I couldn't quite make the structure work. I think and then it was just one of the leads, and I only had enough to go up to 4.6 with a defender. So I like Brighton. I think they only conceded, was it 0.18 xG to Newcastle, and it was lower than 1 against West Ham. So although they are facing some teams which are on the front foot, which is a little bit of a risk, I think just at 4.5, he's got a goal in him. I did consider Veltman, who's better on bonus, but I just think Dunk's 100%. Well, the thing with Dunk is he's 100% mild if they change formation.
Yeah,
he's and he's just I think it's more that I just trust that that he'll play every game, and he's got a goal from set piece.
Isn't Veltman 4.1 or something? How much? He's really cheap, isn't he?
I think he was last season. He was 4.5.
Is he 4.5? Okay, I've heard that somewhere else, and it's incorrect. But anyway, no, Veltman's a decent shout. But no, I like Dunk. I think you've done well there with that pick.
And it's last chance saloon for Mount as well, Adam, is it?
What do you say? So, oh yeah, absolutely. I probably should go on record saying that, so he doesn't. I mean, he's got Southampton after, which doesn't help, because particularly he did quite well versus Southampton last year. But yeah, I think it has to be last chance. I mean, my plan currently, all being well, will be Mount to Zaha.
Yeah, I'd like to do that move.
Yeah, I think I'm almost certainly going to do. Or I might, if I've got the money, I could do Mount down to another Leeds like Aronson, and then potentially Archer up to Mitrovic. Yeah. So that would be another move that I would consider, which strengthens my squad a little bit with rotation then. So, but yeah, that's I made the decision early in the week. I gambled because it was League Cup football, and I think Rodrigo did end up getting a few minutes. So it was a bit of a risk, but I just I like both teams, Leeds and Brighton. So thought this is short term. I'm happy with the moves.
Just on Archer, while you're here, is he rumored to be being loaned out somewhere?
Yeah, I've not kept us up to date with the news, particularly on Villa as I normally do this week. So I've been dipping in and out of stuff. I did see something about that, which worries me a little bit, because and he only had a few minutes versus the other night versus Bolton. I'd like to have seen him have more game time, but yeah, I think he's not going to be a playing option at any point anyway. He's just so I think it's just your standard 4.5 million forward spot. Doesn't really make a difference if it's Archer or someone else. Probably just sensible to pick from a team you're not going to triple up on or want to triple up on.
Okay, and finally, my team, Ramsdale in goals, James, Cucurella, Cancelo and Trent, Salah, Martinelli. I haven't made the transfer yet, but I will very likely be doing Bailey or Almiron to just, we talked about earlier, to Pascal Gross. I really like him. I like his fixtures starting for this weekend, not next game week like you pair. He has Leeds at home, Fulham away, Leicester at home. So I like Gross for that. And then Jesus, Haaland, and Tony. So I've got all 11 playing at home. Excited, thinking Gross and Tony. Like, I know they're not like kind of massively low owned, but I think they are good lower owned players with massive upside. And looking ahead to next week, I haven't got much in the bank. I'll very likely bring Rodrigo in for game week 5. Haven't really worked out yet, but like I say, I think I agree with what you mentioned earlier, Adam, around let this weekend play out, because
things
will have changed again by Monday, right? And you don't know. But I'm not scared of taking hits this year. Like I've always been hit averse. I took a hit last week. It paid off last week. I'm not scared of taking hits. So if I need to take a hit to, move some cash around, so I can get to Rodrigo if I'm desperate for him, or or someone else. Haaland, if I did like Haaland to Mitrovic earlier, just as we mentioned, I'd have a cheapest front line, but that just lets me flood my team with cash elsewhere. I think even if I did Haaland to Kane, I think that still gets me a bit of change as well to put into midfield. So yeah, lots to think about ahead of Game Week 5, but I'm pretty excited for Game Week 4. I think Gross and Tony have got some real chance, some points in Game Week 4 there. The Football Content Awards are back. If you would like to nominate us for content creation in the fantasy football category, please go to the link in the description below and nominate the Green Arrow FPL podcast. Any nominations are gratefully received. Whilst you are there, if you enjoy our team reveals and articles and everything else on Fantasy Football Hub, you can vote for us in the best editorial. Thank you so much in advance for anyone who does this. It's just nominations at this stage. But if you do enjoy the stream or the podcast, go to the Football Content Awards and you can vote for us there in the Fantasy Football section. Finally, competition time. No one went for Odegaard, who's got a 16-pointer, surprisingly. So no prize this week. But for this week's competition and a chance to win one of our fantastic Fantasy Football Hub mugs, you need to like this video. Make sure you press like. Make sure you are subscribed. And then comment on who will be the top point scorer in Game Week 4. Just so you know, gents, I haven't had the top point scorer, but I have had the last two returns. I went for Foden in Game Week 2. He got the goal and assist. And I went for Maddison in Game Week 3 as well. So I'm quite pleased with those. Obviously, they're kind of higher own punts, so I can't have them. But Rich, come to you first. Who do you think be the highest point scorer in Game Week 4?
Oh, this is really difficult. Really difficult. Son,
yeah. Good shout away to West Ham. Adam, what are you thinking?
In Game Week 4, I would go. I'm tempted to go for Van Dijk.
Ooh, okay.
Away to Forest, isn't he?
Yeah. Son's away to Forest. Yeah. Van Dijk's at. Yeah. I'm just going for I'm playing the defender 15-pointer.
I'm going to curse you both, and I'm going to go for Rodrigo. Sorry about that, but
I hope you're right there, buddy.
Right. I don't think I will be, but just like to put a little curse on there. And that is it. That is it from us for this game week. Thank you so much for everyone. Apologies, it's so late in the week. We've been having holidays and work and all this sort of stuff. But thank you so much for everyone who joined us live in the chat. Those who are going to watch it back and those listening on the podcast versions, your support every week is much, much appreciated. Just a reminder, our new My Team feature that we use to showcase our team is now live to use yourself on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk to pick, plan and optimize your FPL team. And there is still 30% off membership. If you do want to join, go to the top link in the description below. You will not regret it. Adam, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people get hold of you?
On Twitter, and my handle has now changed.
Yes.
You've been waiting for this. It's at Hopta Stats.
Come on
Twitter.
At Hopta Stats. I saw that's got a bit of a reaction on Twitter, mate. A very
I
thought I'd reaction. Love it.
I thought I'd do it. It's a bit of fun. It's better than my own name. So
better than a Hopcroft 13.
Yeah, I was getting
Hopcroft 13.
Every time I was saying it, I was just like losing enthusiasm. So yeah, at least. If anything, it's I've definitely got a better Twitter handle.
You have. Rich, thank you so much as usual. Where can people get hold of you?
About that Rich Clarke, FPL.
Love that. And mine's at
Need to change it to Rich Pickens, I think.
Rich Pickens. You do at Rich Pickens.
Rich Pickens on Twitter. Yeah.
Well, I'm not changing mine to Fergie as a Punt. I can't do that.
You've got that's where I was going. I was just saying.
At the moment, mine's at FFH_Fergie. Make sure you drop us on and follow. So this podcast is a video in the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Rate the podcast and leave a comment. We will be back next Friday. We're gonna have to work out who's gonna make it. It's gonna be a tough one next week. After that, we should be back to normal, I think, chaps, on Thursday. But it's been a tough couple of weeks. We'll be back next Friday previewing Game Week 6. Have a great Game Week 4 and 5, and may all your arrows be green. Goodbye for now.